want to know which planet was causing your suffering? How about Earth?
Hey everyone, Brandflakes here, back with a new Eternal Return video. Today's video is going to be a bit different than my usual content. This video is going to be very theory slash yapping focused, so there's not going to be much interesting gameplay going on in the background, but hopefully the things that I talk about and the theories I say and like the concepts I bring up are interesting enough, and hopefully you guys learn a lot. If you're interested in learning how to make your own builds, create your own ideas, and then testing them in Practice Tool, this video should be perfect. But I know that Eternal Return is a pretty easy game to just load a build in, run into the game, and then start slapping people around. So if you don't enjoy this content, let me know. I know that's a very niche slice of the population might appreciate this, but it's something that I enjoy doing a lot. Theory crafting builds in any game is probably like 80% of the reason why I get into games. So that's the reason why you see so many videos of mine having some like wacky ass idea, like the accelerator ISOL, armor pen ISOL, and potentially a few elf dress builds that aren't supposed to be on bruisers coming out. We'll see about that one. But yeah, so getting into the actual video content, essentially what this video is going to be about is how I approach making new builds. And I'll go from top to bottom. So I'll start in the route tool or in the route making page and then go into practice tool afterwards. So essentially what I mean by the route page is that when you're creating a save plan, you can have up to 5, I believe, baseline, unless you buy more. Essentially, this is just how I start out anything. I go into a plan. I'm maining Nikki this season, so most of my ideas will be for Nikki. And I've already lobbed out most of the things I want for Nikki, but I'm going to pretend that I haven't had this idea in particular for the sake of this video. Essentially, I'm going to be loading this plan, and I'm going to be thinking, okay, I want to make a Nikki build that is bulky, but still does a really good amount of damage, but can still also bait people into overcommitting into trying to kill her. So obviously I have a build like that already, in this all caps heal one, but I want a bit more oomph and I want to do a bit more damage and be a bit more like explosive in my approach, because this build kind of lacks damage in the late game. It's still good at damage, but it's not very powerful. It doesn't have that assassinating feel. So maybe instead of that, I just want to deal damage, and if I misplay, I'll die, but if I play well, I'll one-shot somebody still. And so with that in mind, I'll start with my tack skills and augments. Tack skills and augments, I think one of the best default augments for Nikki, if you want to be bulky and bait really easily, is always going to be Protocol Violation. Protocol Violation is really strong on Nikki because you can really time the explosion very easily. If you hit your ultimate and hit Protocol Violation and then try and CC chain or use W, there'll be like a half a second where you have to commit to staying inside the AoE. But if you're able to read the fight really well and prime your Protocol Violation like a half a second or a second earlier in advance before you ult somebody, it's really easy to get the full value, damage included, health included, on both your team and the enemy team if everything goes well. So Protocol Violation is always a very easy pick. And then for augments, I'm probably looking at Siphon Maelstrom, just because Siphon Maelstrom is the back-loaded heal slash bulkiness option. And since I'm playing Nikki, I'm going to be trying to assassinate people, and if I'm assassinating people, a lot of my damage will be immediate, so I'm going to go Stopping Power. And then Recharger, Overwatch, Power Crescendo, these will be depending on what I build. If I have Elegant Gown or 35% CDR, Overwatch will be quite nice, just get the early game amp. But otherwise, Recharger and Power Crescendo are going to be baseline much safer. And then for the green augments, personally, I enjoy going Thorn Shackles because Nikki has a lot of CC on her end that's really easy to proc, which gives me access to Penny Pincher. Or I can go like a Blue Tree, get Unwavering Mentality or Painkiller to really make myself bulkier in fights, as well as Cavalcade to let me be that much stronger when I'm diving alone. Red Tree is fine if I'm trying to full commit to the assassin build, but the other two trees are a bit safer if I'm half committing. If I'm trying to go the full assassin route, I'm probably going Contempt for the Weak and Animal Reaper, just so I have as much power as possible. But as a melee that's bounced around having tank stats and using W well, this is very risky if I'm not playing well. I mean, to be fair, going Thorn Shackles and Penny Pincher is the same effect, but at least with Penny Pincher, I can guarantee spikes earlier, but it's really up to you if you think you'll need the cheaper buy options. So instead of starting out with the route itself, I personally like going from the end and looking backwards. I always want to see what items I want to build into. And the reason why I like doing this is because almost every item in the game has a direct upgrade. So for example, Frostpetal Hand goes into Permafrost because both these items have CDR. I don't have to mix up my build to account for CDR if I start with Frostpetal and go into Permafrost. Unlike if I had gone from Buddha Palm into Permafrost, now I'm gaining 50% CDR, and that means my base build either has to have 15% CDR or I'm being forced to swap off of a CDR piece somewhere else for stat efficiency. As another example, Divine Fist directly upgrades into Iron Fist. So if I just have like these items that line up with each other, like Covert Agent Uniform goes High Priest Robes, these two will go into Elegant Gown quite easily. Cardinal Robes, Commander's Armor, these will go into Cabana or Holy Orders easily, or Blood Cloak. Like you see, like when the stats align, mostly it's CDR based. Like you're looking at CDR essentially. When the CDR slots align, it's a lot easier to make your build. So that's why I like looking forward or going to the end and then going backwards, because especially for mages, they have very flexible items that let you go whichever direction you want. But all that said, so I'm looking for this tanky build that still does damage. And so when I talk about tanky build that still does damage in my head, the items I immediately think about are going to be for mages, Revenant, because it comes with a lot of HP. It's going to be Asher Helm, because it comes with some HP. It's going to be Lunar's Embrace, which is still a bit of an undertuned item, but it comes with, again, HP, defense, and skill amp. So these three items are going to be the ones that I probably want the most. Revenant is the one I'm most iffy about because it's a little expensive. And also, I'm not going a amp acceleration item. So if I'm thinking about the bulkiness, the Revenant is probably the highest flex slot. Do I want to commit to the Revenant to really go all in on this half tank, half assassin playstyle? Or do I want to go Holy Orders to really commit to doing damage? Or do I want Cabana to have an even cheaper build and also have the utility from heal cut still? And so that's something that I'll decide later. But for now, I'll default to Revenant. And then for my legs and gloves, these slots look like they're both going to have to be CDR. So because of that, I'm going to go Permafrost so that I can justify running these two tank items. And then my legs will either be Glacial Shoes or they'll be Windwalkers. So I'll just make a note slot here where I put in Taproots and Windwalkers, just so that I know for anyone, for myself and anyone importing this build later, I can go these options as well if I really want to. And so looking at this, I'm thinking this looks decent. Like I have CDR, Permafrost is very cheap. Everything in this build is super, super cheap except for Revenant. And it's a decent mix of Meteorite entry items, but otherwise this build is very affordable. If I really want to be cheap, again, I can add in Cabana, I can add in Holy Orders into these slots, just to remind myself that I can use these items. And so I'm looking at these, I'm like, okay, so I want these. So that means in my base build, I want to go Permafrost. In my chest piece, I can actually leave that blank because there are a lot of options that work for this chest piece, like Revenant. Doctor's Gown is the most direct correlation, but Cardinal Robes and Commanders are both mage items that come with a lot of defense and skill amps, so it could still work very safely. For the helmet piece, I'm probably gonna go for Vigilante, but honestly, like for base helmet, it doesn't really matter. Vigilante's effect debilitation is pretty weak. I'm mostly looking for the HP, but I'm not gonna cry any tears if I don't have to, or if I have to not run Vigilante. Like if I'm being forced into Imperial Bourgeonet, it's not the worst deal. I'm getting 18 more amp and I'm gaining some movement speed, and I have some CDR, which lets me potentially flex into Overwatch if I want to be a bit more of a early game burster. So I'll leave this blank as well. For the arm piece, I have two. Honestly, it's another set of mixed bags like Dropnir, Veritas Lux Maya, Burnished Aegis, even Sports Watch for early game. These are all items that are very decent on mages early game, so even this slot I can leave empty. It's really just down to the legs. I can go either Tachyons or Delta Red. Tachyons is more defensive and rounds up my CDR, but Delta Red has 13 more amp, which can be really impactful early game because of how Nikki's passive works. So I'm actually going to decide on taking Delta Red because it's not only a shinier item, but it feels way nicer on Nikki. And so with just two items clicked, I'm going to click on the auto generate plan, because even with just two items, I can see if I can maybe make a 2-zone with these builds, or with these two items that can maybe create something really illegal. So for example here, I'm looking at these, I'm like, oh, okay, I can fit Doctor's Gown and Corrupting Touch. I will go a bit over CDR, but it'll honestly not be the biggest deal because I'm 20% over. Again, I can go early Overwatch if I really want to. I can then click on detailed inventory and I see like, oh, there's no triple items, so that my early loot zone won't be as grieved. So is there a chest piece that I can use that will, or a headpiece rather, that I can use that will not grieve my items and still let me just drone in a singular thing? that's when I just click around. So here, Vigilante, I do need only one bike helmet. The only issue with Vigilante is that I know it needs a lighter, and I know Gas Station has no lighter, so I would need a drone and a lighter and a bike helm. So Vigilante won't be working that well. Imperial Burgeonet needs 2 items, which sucks. Motorcycle Helmet needs 3 items, which also sucks. Imperial Crown needs 2 items, which sucks. So unless I want to go like a ADC item, even Cowboy Hat needs a lighter. It looks like there's not really great options for me to try and cheese out a 2-zoner with this build. So I'll opt to just go for a different route. So even though there's a potential for 2-zone, because of how there's no headpiece that works for me in there, I can't actually commit to it. So I'll start shopping around for different things. So obviously there's gonna be a lot of 3 zones available. So at this point, since I see so many 3 zones, I'm like, okay, I don't actually care about these 2 items. Let's find another premium item I really, really want for this build. And for this build in particular, I'm going to say the premium item that I really want to keep is probably Vigilante, just because early game, the bleed can save you a lot of time between zone to zone, because sometimes the mobs will live with like 5 HP and then your Vigilante will kill them. So it's a bit niche, but it's kind of helpful. So maybe I want these 3 items specifically. So now I see gas station, alley, school. This zone, I don't like this routing because if you spawn on this side of temple or like in the middle of alley, then getting a gas station is kind of inefficient. If you spawn the house to the left of alley, it's really, really good because you loot that and then you run sprint into the house and gas station and you can teleport into school. Like maybe I can reroute it to looking a bit nicer. School, gas station, alley sounds a lot better in my head, but let me just see if there's any good items. So I have Doctor's Gown and Dropnir, which works out, and the items do fit pretty well. School is another one of those interesting zones where if you get the back zones, you're kind of sad, but if you get the front zones, it's really nice. And also the TP in school in the front area next to the Hyperloop is really efficient because I can kill over the wall, kill a chicken immediately, teleport to gas station, loot gas station, go to chickens, kill chickens there. So this route has some potential. I like this route. So I'm gonna lock in this route. I'm just gonna call it some random numbers. I always just slap in random numbers when I'm lobbing a build out. But the items, the items are pretty efficient. Alley being looted early might be a problem, but if I'm fast enough, then it won't matter. I can always loot multiple zones in alley if I'm really fishing for it. I already have my Pro Call and my Siphon Maelstrom locked in, and just because the farm and the grief potential of these early zones looks pretty good, I'm going to go ahead and actually run Penny Pincher and Coin Toss because Alley is a pretty popular ending zone, and I can also get Wolves and Alley, then immediately run to PlayStation for those Wolves, and that puts me in perfect striking distance of Temple Stream Pond, which are very, very popular zones, and there's a lot of mobs, or a lot of, not mobs, but a lot of people there that I could potentially kill as Nikki if I'm playing well. Of course, I'm not running actual damage augs, so it might be a bit fishy. So now that I've made this build, I'm going to go into Training Tool. I always do this if I am unfamiliar with the routing, and I'm not really familiar with School, Alley, wherever the School, Alley, whatever it was. So I'm just going to go in here just to make really, really sure. And so a quick start, everything is locked in. And I'm just going to run the build once, and then I'm going to check the damage. I'm going to really think about whether or not I like the feeling of it. And then once I've confirmed that, I'll probably go into a Norms or into a rank game and run it there. So the timing for everything will be like 5 seconds off because you don't have the 5-second countdown in a practice tool. But you'll see like, okay, this is a good spawn. I'll take this. I'm gonna full loot. Usually I'm aware enough of my route to know if I need to drink the water or not. But I'll do my full route. I kind of did an efficient routing there. Manhole cover always has a chicken on it. Go ahead and kill it with a little burst and then run over immediately. Not going to bother with the other chickens because it takes a lot of time to kill them and I don't have Blade of Truth. When I spawn, I have a few items to craft immediately, which is always good for efficiency. And then I'm going to keep running. I have everything now, so I'm just going to dash over the wall. And I can actually just run through here because I'm so close. If I was on the bottom one here or one of these, I'd probably TP through. But this one is nice because it gives me the ability to craft again while I'm looting. And also chickens will be right there for me to not only cook, but also kill the chickens for the rest of the letter I need. And so once I'm done with this initial start, I will be able to finish everything. And then I'll keep in mind what items I can potentially loot in this zone. And then once I'm more used to the route, I can even think about the previous zones and what I can prep ahead of time. Just because there's a lot of items in this game, like fabric armor, which are a massive pain to backtrack and loot for because those items are so heavily contested. And so I'm going to want to see and remember if I needed those, and also remember if I was in any zones that needed, that could collect them to begin with. So I need running shoes. These Delta Reds do need running shoes, but there should be 2 running shoes in every zone, so I probably could have seen it. These wolves I would have been late to, but we'll pretend for the sake of this, we're here on time. And I'm noticing that even though I ran straight to the wolves, I didn't cook at all. So this route's ironically a bit slow because I wasn't able to cook before the wolves came close to spawning. So I have to keep that in mind. I had to choose between cooking and between getting a proper wolves fight. So that's a big deal. Now I'm also level 6. What I do to gauge my early game griefing is I load up a bot. I put them like just round up on my own stats. I have 100. I have 90 armor, so I'll put them at 100 armor because of mastery differences. Like defense mastery reduces your damage by a small margin, so I always put the defense like 10 higher than what my armor is just to account for that. And then that's when I'll just load up my full combo to see how much damage I'll do. And honestly, it looks like my damage is pretty pitiful. I'll probably need to do multiple chases, and even then, it's not that great looking. So knowing that I'm not going to be that good at griefing, I'm either looking for very, very squishy characters like Adriana, Katja. I won't be interacting with tank characters at all, just because it'll take me too long to kill them. Or I might even just kill these wolves. Oh, maybe the plan is kill these wolves, run here, kill these wolves, and then immediately group my team through the temple hyperloop. I could go for my usual greed of killing the mutant boars here, but since I'm not really assassinating anyone with this build, maybe I don't want to take that risk. And there's no good RNG prep in these 3 zones, so I might just TP out. And so maybe I'll go back into the build and kind of tune it a bit more again, just to make sure I like what I saw. Maybe I'll go into there's like different zones which either have better griefing options or better access to RNG prep. Really, it's just at that point, it's just up to me labbing it in norms and seeing how I enjoyed it. But yeah, that is pretty much how I look at making builds. I hope that makes sense. It's a very, I don't know if this video counts as low effort or not, but I hope the theory is interesting. I hope the yapping was interesting to listen to, and just let me know in the comments if it's something you'd like to see in the future for different characters. I hope you guys have a good day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.